Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Sleep Startle, a podcast by me, Maya Carlton. And if you tuned into our last episode, you know that this is the second episode of a day. Yay, Black Friday. Well, it's actually Small Business Saturday, but the deals just keep on coming, and they're 2 episodes in one day. So, this one's going to be a little bit longer. I hope you enjoy. And I hope you stick around till the end of it when it actually gets twisted. So let's get started with Scarab. 1. Let's get wrecked, bitches! Caroline squealed as they boarded the private jet. She's marrying for money, not love. Not like that bothered Stephanie, though. They were bound for Hawaii and a week of fun for Caroline's bachelorette. Her soon-to-be husband had also provided the group with a beachside villa at the nicest resort on the island. All rich bullshit aside, Caroline was most excited to go ghost hunting or something crazy like that. It hadn't crossed Stephanie's mind once as to why she thought the Four Seasons Maui would be the mecca for spiritual activity, but she went along with it. There were 4 of them on the trip: Caroline, Susie, Veronica, and of course, Stephanie. Stephanie and Caroline had been friends since they were children, spending all of their primary school years together, hand in hand. Susie and Veronica were her college friends. Stephanie had met them on occasion and didn't particularly enjoy their Valley Girl personalities. Stephanie had stayed in Colorado for university, while Caroline went to USC and lived out her Beverly Hills dreams. Her soon-to-be husband was a music producer she met at some party she randomly ended up at. He'd cheat on her someday, but she didn't care. It was clear she cared more about the lifestyle than the actual love they shared. Susie and Veronica were yes-men and encouraged the dead-end marriage, using Caroline by proxy to fulfill their dreams, and that disgusted Stephanie. 2. Being in a large group of women is extremely taxing, especially when only one of them is truly your friend. This bachelorette would drone on for far too long than Stephanie was hoping for, and the only solace she achieved was her early morning swims. She'd swim as far as she could until the waves stopped crashing and the water became black, when the villa was long out of view and she could forget her troubles. Every day she did this, but today the tide was especially low and brought new mysteries into Stephanie's life. She swam out as far as normal, but when she went to turn back, a glimmer in the peeking sun caught her eye. 5 more feet out was a large flat rock with something glinting off the top. It called to her, and without realizing, she was suddenly standing before it. A large hieroglyph, approximately 10 feet in length, laid before her. It depicted a man breaking a body in half. It was oddly beautiful, but at the same time terrifying. Stephanie didn't know how to feel, or if she should say anything to anyone. She found something that wasn't meant to be found, and was scared to reap the consequences. The swim back to the beach was taxing. Stephanie felt the life being drained out of her with every arm stroke. She felt as though the tide was ripping her skin off and washing it back onto the large rock. She almost felt as though she may drown, and was possibly okay with the idea, if it meant no more glorified girls' time. But she made it to shore, and when she looked back towards the ocean, the hieroglyphs were covered, and she almost doubted that she had imagined it. Almost. 3. The town outside the resort was a drastic change from the westernized whitewashed hotel and beach cabanas. It was rustic but wholesome. The townspeople gathered in areas together, playing games and keeping out of the hot sun. The girls were on a shopping excursion, as Veronica had called it, looking for idols and totems to feed into the voodoo vibes Caroline so craved. They walked into a small gift shop. It was full of hand-carved wooden figurines and beautiful chimes and dream catchers. Everyone split off in their separate directions. Stephanie felt pulled towards the back right corner. She found herself picking up a small gray slab with a glittering gold hieroglyph. It was the same one she had seen in the water. A hand touched her shoulder, startling her. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That is a very special rock you're holding. It depicts our savior, the giant." Her voice was warm. She was an islander. heavy-set, and in her mid-50s. She went on, "The legend goes, when our people were being attacked, a giant stood deep in the water. He crushed every boat that tried to pass. He single-handedly saved our shores from demise. But when our people went to thank him, he dissolved into the ocean, never to be seen again." Stephanie felt compelled to give her a hug. The woman had no idea how much she had eased her mind. "Stephanie!" Veronica's shrill voice rang out through the shop. "We're going to the jungle waterfall. Caroline says the Fountain of Youth is there, and we all know you need it." Stephanie rolled her eyes. The woman gave her another warm smile before disappearing behind a curtain to the back of the shop. She felt content knowing that the hieroglyph wasn't evil. It protected, and was now protecting her mind. 4. The Hawaiian jungles are beautiful. Sun glimpsed off every dewdrop on every leaf. It did feel mystical. Maybe she was beginning to understand why Caroline believed Maui was overly spiritual. They had a mile to the waterfall, or so-called Fountain of Youth. Stephanie could walk forever in this jungle. She felt so calm and at peace. Besides the constant chattering of her friends, they chattered and squawked like the birds lining the trees. That thought made Stephanie smile. Mindless birds. She found that soothing. The waterfall flowed off a very large cliff into a sea-foam green pool, before exiting into the Pacific Ocean. It was beautiful, but had one major problem. It was loaded with Instagram models, taking loads of pictures, ruining the beauty with their own vanity. This was right up Susie and Veronica's alley. They ran for the emerald pool, chattering about poses the whole way. Stephanie sighed and went off down the beach on her own. There was a small grove of trees approximately 500 feet away that piqued Stephanie's interest. She felt the girls' eyes follow her as she walked away. She assumed that was a good thing. At least they knew where she would be. The grove secluded a small bay. The sand disappeared and a rocky granite surface met the trees. The air was incredibly still and the whole world fell silent. She took her shoes off, ready to ease into the warm waters, but a small sign stopped her. It was wooden, with "Do Not Enter" carved into it. She looked out expecting to see sharks or jellyfish, but instead found herself looking at something familiar. Large, gray slabs with beautiful gold etching laid before her. At least 12 were in the water, all depicting different images. "Ollie, ollie, oxen free! Where'd you run off to, Stephanie?" Caroline yelled. She appeared through the trees with Veronica and Susie in tow. "Wow, look at this. This is way better than the waterfall. Great find, Steph." Stephanie kept her distance from the rocks. The sign put a strong sense of unease running through her mind. She watched as her friends hopped and skipped over every image, but they always missed one, the one directly in front of her. It wasn't etched in gold as the others, but a black obsidian. It looked like a woman wearing a long dress and a veil, holding a small child. Although the child didn't look healthy, it flopped downward from her arm. It was extremely detailed compared to the others, and that wasn't a good thing. She was stuck staring, eating up every horrible detail that she didn't even hear the laughter behind her, or feel the hands that found her back. She didn't realize till her hands and knees were full of sharp rocks, and her face was a foot away from the dark obsidian face etched inside the rock. Stephanie couldn't control her emotions then, and began to sob. "Steph, I'm so sorry. I was just joking. I didn't think you'd fall. I didn't think she'd fall, I swear." Veronica said the second half over her shoulder, directed at Caroline, who had a very large grimace gracing her mouth. She moved quickly, yet still with caution, as she made her way over to Stephanie, offering a leg up. Stephanie waved her off and got up herself. She was mad. Mad at Veronica, mad at Caroline, mad at the whole stupid trip she never wanted to come on. She kept her distance from the group walking back to the villa, staying at least 10 feet behind the other girls, choosing to stay upset. She was more upset with herself that she wasn't able to enjoy the beauty of the jungle any longer. 5. The sky is black, and Stephanie finds herself alone in the large hotel suites, unsure where everyone is, dread sinking into her veins. They must have gone out to eat without her. They just didn't wake her. She needed her rest. She went to grab her phone, but found it had no service, and in an instant realized no lights were on in the cabana. She tried to flick them on, and nothing happened. She was alone, in the dark, with no one to hear her cries. Luckily, Stephanie knew where candles had been from looking to adorn a bachelorette cake. She had one long candle and went in search of the breaker box. Her search was mostly unsuccessful, searching every bedroom, the living room, and the kitchen. The last stop was the bathroom. As her hand reached towards the knob, she began to hear sobbing. So someone else was here with her. Most likely Susie. She was such a crybaby. But something held her back from turning the knob. It seemed silly. Susie was on the other side and in need of help, but Stephanie was scared. She knocked instead. This seemed like an ideal alternative, but the sobbing only got louder and ushered her in through the doorway. Stephanie made her way in towards the bathtub, but the crying stopped, and as she pulled back the shower curtain, there was nothing there. But there was something there. She just didn't see it. In the pale yellow glow of a candle, a dark figure stood behind her, a woman in black. Stephanie was running for her life, through every inch of the forest, searching for another soul. There was something following her, something devoid of soul, that wanted hers. She caught glimpses of the black shadow as she mercilessly ran. She had sworn she'd seen these trees before and those fallen logs. She debated if she was going in circles and if the demon liked that, if it was baiting her like a cat does a mouse. She couldn't fully ponder the thought since she was focused on other, more pertinent things, like finding the town and her friends. They would save her. But then everything came to a halt. As Stephanie almost plunged off a cliff face before her, she stopped just in time for her toes to be so delicately hanging off the edge. At that moment, she realized she'd seen this cliff before, but from another perspective. The glitter of the hieroglyphs glinted in the moonlight, an inch of water gently lapping up upon them. She stood transfixed for a moment too long, as the black mass was already near, too close for comfort, grasping every cell inside her body. It invaded through her skin, and her whole body became filled with black goo. But she felt some of it escape. As she glanced down towards her wrist, it was spurting out, not flowing like a lovely Hawaiian waterfall, but spurting like a geyser, and then everything went black. 6. A murmuring can be heard outside a hospital room. "I had no idea she was sick," one voice can be heard saying. "I know, and she hadn't been taking her meds. She told me they were Xanax, and she flushed them down the toilet," another chimed in. They continued to talk, with hushed tones, only sometimes loud enough for sentences to waft into her hospital bed. Her eyes fluttered, and then returned to a resting place. She wasn't ready to be awake yet. A doctor approaches the group of women outside the room. Stephanie lost a lot of blood during her episode. Since she had stopped taking her meds for her schizophrenia, the paranoia got the best of her. "Unfortunately, we're going to have to keep her here for medical observation until she's well again. I'm sorry, but you'll have to come back during visitation hours. We'll be taking her out of a coma today." He also spoke with a hushed tone of voice, but Stephanie heard all of it. She couldn't force her eyes open, but her mind went wild. She wasn't a schizophrenic. She never had been. What were they talking about? She hadn't flushed any pills, Xanax or otherwise. She was trapped in her body, lifeless, but her mind was on fire. How would she get out? How would she tell them it was all a mistake? They needed to know. She needed to tell them. Her eyes popped open like a bursting waterfall. Her hands flew in the air, ready for a fight, but no one was in the room. She was all alone. Her body was rigid, but she managed to flex every muscle, preparing it for the journey ahead. Except when she made her way out of the bed, her feet planted into the ground, she collapsed. She was too weak to make it to the door. She resorted to crawling. It felt like an eternity to crawl 10 feet to the door, with the hard linoleum tiles slicing into her knees. She managed to pull her way up to the handle, but it didn't give way. It stayed firm in its horizontal position. She was locked inside. There was no way out. She outstretched her arms toward the small glass window, and when her fingers made contact, she pulled her whole body to peer out. And what she saw made her collapse again, but harder. It knocked the wind out of her, and she scurried back toward the bed and rang the nurse button as many times as she could, over and over and over again, until someone entered. It wasn't the nurse she so desperately craved to see. It was a woman, and black. She held a large gray needle. Well, there you have it, your second story for the day, and dang, does it feel good to finally have another longer story up. It seems like it had been quite a while since I had managed to pull one off, but I did really enjoy this dream and I really wanted to portray it in a good sense, so it took me a lot longer to write, and it took me some creative finagling to make it work the way I wanted. I really like to work and rework things so that it's new and interesting. I mean, they are my dreams, so I'm sure some things are repetitive and, you know, not every story can be totally unique, but I really do enjoy writing these stories for you guys. Something that's been on my mind, though, is if I should start having a Friday podcast where it's actually maybe like a long form 1 hour podcast, maybe with guests like my friends, where we discuss dreams, ghost stories, all the things that I love, that are just the weird mystical world of my mind, and I'd love to get other people's perspectives. So if that's something that you guys would be interested in, please let me know, leave a comment, message me. I post these on YouTube, I post them on Spotify, on iTunes, on SoundCloud, and then I also have my Instagram at m.x.andra, so you can find me at all of those places, and I would love to know if you would like to see me and my friends discuss this. I'm sure I would be able to film those episodes, and hopefully have more long-form podcasts go up where it's just a normal conversation. So yeah, I hope you have a wonderful holiday week.